A couple of quick points just to emphasize some things that have been said and to provoke some other points. First, kudos to Majority Leader Morelli and the mayor and the county executive for coordinating this effort. I want to thank Fran Barrett of my staff, who's forgotten more in this area than most of us will ever know, and the Lieutenant Governor, who's been doing a great job. First, don't become complacent and don't become apathetic. For when you hear about organizing to fight poverty, most of us, depending on how much gray hair we have on our head, we've been doing this for 10, 20, or 30 years. So when you hear another effort to combat poverty, you have a tendency to say, oh, another task force on poverty, right? We've been doing this since the 60s. This is different. That's number one. Number two, solving poverty is not a situation where we don't have the answer. We're not looking for the cure for cancer here, right? We know how to fix poverty. We know that if you have the supports in the home and if you have nutrition and mentoring and housing and education and they're coordinated, that you can educate a person, you can retrain a person, you can provide job training, job placement, and that we can solve poverty. It is not a God-given affliction. It is not a disease that we have not yet figured out how to cure. It is a man-made situation. Number three, it's not necessarily for want of resources. When I was in the federal government, we took impoverished census tracts and we mapped the census tract, and then we mapped all the government and private funds that go into those communities. And you would be amazed at how much money is going into these communities. The problem is the disconnectedness of all of it. Deputy Majority Leader's word, the system has failed here. You have federal government that runs some programs directly, federally funded programs, state programs directly, state-funded programs, not-for-profits that all do their own thing without any coordination. This is as much a system design and management and coordination effort as anything else, which, by the way, is probably the hardest thing to do, right? Get agencies to cooperate. Make sure that you're providing the services that no agency is now providing. We've been grappling with this for 30 years. How do you provide that one-stop planning that treats a family as a family unit? We're doing this in healthcare now. Why do we have all these different contractors and vendors providing all services for a patient? Why can't we get healthcare to a point where we say, okay, you're in charge of the patient from soup to nuts, and whatever they need, we pay you one fee and you subcontract for the services. So if the person needs an operation, you pay the hospital. If the person needs rehab, you pay the rehab center. But there's one vendor that does it. We're actually making more progress in healthcare than we are in the social service housing field, which is amazing because the medical services were a much more balkanized infrastructure for a lot of years and much more technical. So that, to me, is a big part of what this is about. How do you take those areas? How do you really coordinate services so they are seamless and they are integrated, and therefore the family, the mother, the father if he's there, the children coordinated through the school with the aftercare, et cetera. That's the challenge. That has been the challenge, and a challenge that we have yet to truly master. The good news here is it's a scale that it can be done. The nice thing about Rochester is it is a scalable, manageable situation. This can be done. We're not trying to solve poverty nationwide. We can map it, we can count the blocks, we can count the people, we can measure the performance. It's not for want of expertise or agencies or services. Rochester also has a beautiful ethic of an altruistic community that steps up time and time again. So all the pieces are here. We have to knit the quilt, which is easier said than done. But all the pieces are here. On top of that, in this past budget, the legislature, led by the Senate, in this case, Senator Joe Robach, appropriated $6 million with Deputy Majority Leader Morelli, and my administration supported it, for the city of Rochester for anti-poverty initiatives, which will go to supplement what's being done by the task force. So it's an additional $6 million, which is good news, and kudos to Joe Robach primarily and Joe Morelli. But it's not for want of resources. It is the coordination and the focus of them. Last point, and the next meeting is going to be the REDC, Regional Economic Development Council. I love this initiative as part of the REDC process. See, one of the criticisms of the Regional Economic Development Council is that it's all high-end focused. High-tech companies coming in, not necessarily Rochester, but as a program statewide. High-tech on college campuses. But the criticism is, yeah, but where are the low-end jobs, and where are the entry-level jobs, and why aren't we focusing on that? Which is a good point, but it has tended not to be the priority for the REDC. So this application, which will have high-end business development and an anti-poverty agenda, I think is going to be a very powerful REDC application. And then last point, the comparison was made to Buffalo. I know there is a little Buffalo envy, let's call it, or Buffalo comparison. Buffalo, I gave a grant to in my second year, the Buffalo Billion. I thought it was a very good idea for Buffalo, and I happen to be correct. It was politically a really terrible idea because every city other than Buffalo said, and how about us? Buffalo spent about $500 million of the billion. It was funding over time. And actually, they haven't even spent the $500 million. And Buffalo is a tremendous success. And Howard Zemsky spearheaded Buffalo, so he knows what it's done exactly. But if you go to Buffalo, which on the numbers had a much worse problem than Rochester or Syracuse or Albany, just in scale and scope, and had been depressed for a much longer time than anywhere else. It was the most needy place in the state, period. And you start with the greatest need, it was Buffalo. But they haven't even expended $500 million, and they have changed the entire culture and trajectory of the city. The next round of the REDC awards is $500 million. So it is the same amount that has been used to turn around Buffalo. And Buffalo, again, on scale, is larger. So these REDC awards in this next round are really huge. And if you want to change the trajectory of the city, winning this application can change literally the future of Rochester and the Finger Lakes region. So, and adding this anti-poverty initiative, I think, is a brilliant strategic piece. That's not to say that my words mean anything as to whether or not Rochester wins the application. That is up to the committee that makes the decision. But if you lose, it's Howard Zemsky's fault. I just want you to know that. Thank you very much.